How to beat language learning pessimism. So I'm not going to waste your time, guys. There's a reason most people quit before they've achieved something big, and the reason is because they don't actually think their hard work is going anywhere. So many language learners, and I think a lot of people when they do something difficult, but especially in the language learning community, are very pessimistic about the effort they're putting in and if it's actually going to go anywhere. And this video is basically going to be a beginner's guide to destroying language learning pessimism and basically boosting your progress. So if you do like this kind of educational content, definitely hit the subscribe button, but let's go. So what is language learning pessimism? Language learning pessimism is the feeling of wasting your time on something that won't pay off. So this, although I've called it language learning pessimism, what this actually is called a fixed mindset. And I have already talked about growth mindsets and fixed mindsets before, but basically the fixed mindset is the idea that talent comes from luck and it can't change. Therefore, there's not really that much point trying. And this is a really negative mindset to have because it will stop you from actually, that's obviously not true, by the way. Progress is possible and it does come from hard work. But of course, if you don't believe that, there's not really a point to actually trying. So if that is you and you do feel like putting in effort is kind of not really going anywhere, this video is definitely for you. So there are two things you need to do to actually beat language learning pessimism. Two main problems. So number one, we need to shift beliefs to a growth mindset. If we continue with the fixed mindset, we're not actually going to make any progress, and we need to realize that we do need to change our mindset to actually make progress in this thing. And the second problem is productivity. So if you're not actually being as productive as possible, it's pretty hard to have a growth mindset when you're not actually trying, because of course you're not getting anywhere if you're not trying. So we'll talk about that as well. But yeah. Number one, growth mindset. So a growth mindset is the opposite of a fixed mindset. The growth mindset is the idea that talent is earned through hard work. So results equal effort. This is kind of the opposite of the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset would think that talent can't change. The growth mindset thinks that talent can change. You just have to try hard. So no growth mindset basically means you have no reason to try. For example, if you drive a car, you would obviously put fuel in the car because you believe that the car requires fuel to drive, which is obviously true. If you didn't think the car needed fuel to drive, you wouldn't waste your money on putting fuel in the car, obviously, because you wouldn't believe it actually has any effect. And it's kind of the same with putting effort into a passion project like language learning, because if you don't actually think that you putting effort in and studying and doing flashcards and all these other things is actually going to get anywhere, you're not really motivated to try, which of course means you're not going to try. And if you don't try, you're not going to make progress, as I'll demonstrate in the graph I've made on the next page. So you do need to understand that progress does come from putting effort in, and if you don't actually believe this, you won't get anywhere. So understand that you do want to become good at something you can't do right now. The nature of improving at something is that you can't do it right now. And that means that you're going to have to do something you're not very good at for a little bit, and that is called the grind, which is a period of difficulty. So basically, I've kind of made a graph to try and explain this period that people go through, and I think it's pretty easy to follow along. So basically, when there's something you want to get good at that you can't do, there is a period of becoming better at it that's called the grind, and it's basically the period of being not good at something but having to do it. And it can be painful for people, and a lot of people actually give up, as I'll show you in the next few slides. So you start off with can't do. You're not actually able to do something. In language learning, you wouldn't be able to speak the language you're learning, but you have a growth mindset. You recognize that you can actually improve at this skill that you're not very good at. And because you have the growth mindset, you invest time and effort, you get results over time. Results would be like, little wins, like you understand what these words mean, you understand what this grammar rule is, etc. And then over time, you build up enough results to say, yes, you can do it. And that's done through putting in time and effort. So you need to invest for a language months and years, and you need to try hard. You need to watch, you need to listen to people speak, you need to read books, do flashcards, study, note take, etc. to make progress in a language. But what is actually the key to all of this? The answer is the growth mindset, because you start off not being able to do something, but of course, the only reason you're actually doing all these things is because you believe that you can make progress by putting in effort. You don't start off having any results or being able to speak the language. The only thing you have is your mindset, which is that you can make progress. That's the only thing you always have that can't really be taken away from you. You can only take it away from yourself. So of course, because you believe that you can make progress by putting in time and effort, you put in time and effort, and then you do make progress. But the problem is, a lot of people don't actually have this growth mindset, and what happens when you don't have a growth mindset is you don't actually make any progress. So let's look at this from a different perspective, which is what usually happens. You can't speak a language, but you want to. You have a fixed mindset, which means you don't think that you're actually going to make any progress by putting in effort. You see people that can speak the language you want to be able to speak, and you just assume, oh yeah, they were born with that because their parents spoke it, or I can't actually learn, it's too difficult. And because of that, you don't see the point in investing any time. You don't see the point in trying hard because it's uncomfortable. And then, of course, because you don't invest any time and effort, you don't get any results, which means you're never actually able to speak the language. And this is the reality for most people. I think the classroom language learning, there was a statistic that said, I think it was like 99 or 99.5% failure rate, which means that 99.5% of the people who studied in wherever they took that census were unsuccessful in that they didn't end up being able to actually have conversations with people in that language. And we all know, like, most people who start a language don't end up learning it. Like, that's just common sense. And this is one of the reasons why, because they want to speak the language, but they just don't think there is an actual way for them to be able to do that, which means, of course, they give up. So here is what the actual reality is. I do promise you that you can and will make progress by putting in hard work. Do not believe this rubbish that you can't actually make progress in a language because, you know, it's, oh, you need to have learned it as a 2-year-old because your parents spoke it to you, or your brain's just not wired in a certain way. That's absolute nonsense. You can and will make progress by putting in hard work into a language. I've done it myself, so I'm not like repeating something. I can say that it is true because I've done it before. I think one of the big problems with the growth mindset is that Western society glamorizes results over effort. So basically, I've talked about this before, and I think it's really interesting. There's effort and then there's results. Effort is kind of like what you need to do to get somewhere. For example, lifting weights to get strong. Results is the result of the effort you put in. For example, looking strong after you've lifted the weights, just as an example. And I think we glamorize the product, the result, rather than the actual process of getting there. Like, for example, if you go on social media, you'll see, like, you know, people with money, people in good shape, people living a good life, but you don't actually see the effort they put in to get there. And I think that, just on a side note, that does cause a lot of like insecurity and mental health problems with people. But yeah, that's kind of the society we live in. So that does contribute to people assuming that, oh yeah, just because you see someone who can, you know, speak a language, like speak 8 languages or anything like that, you just assume that they got it on accident, or they just were lucky, like their parents spoke it, etc. And you don't, or they're lying, that's a big one as well. And you don't actually see the hard work that they put in if they did in fact learn all those languages. And you really do need to unplug from that because it's harmful to your mindset. It starts you off here, which then wrecks everything else. You need to start off here. You need to recognize that you can actually learn any language you want, provided you have a growth mindset, which means you accept that you can make progress, and then you put in time and effort, get results over time until you fill up that result meter, basically, and you can speak the language. And finally, I actually thought of this. If someone else has said it, I'm sorry. I literally just thought of it. I haven't read it anywhere. Become the person people think had it easy. So if you ever see someone who can speak a bunch of different languages or do something really cool and people just assume, oh yeah, they're either lying or they had it easy for whatever reason, I think you should try and become that person. Like, do the really hard work that a lot of people can't do. Make progress in something you enjoy. Make a lot of progress, and then people will eventually look to you as you once looked to someone else as the person who's either lying or like had it easy because you're just so good at something they can't wrap their head around the fact that you got there. That's, I think, what everyone should try and strive to be. Maybe that's just me, but yeah. The second thing is to maximize productivity. So on the growth mindset, as I said before, is important because if you don't have it, you can't make progress. But of course, if you're being really unproductive, you're not going to make progress anyway. So of course, if you're not making any progress because you're learning like an idiot, basically, you're not going to want to have a growth mindset because you're just going to look at it like, yeah, I tried learning and it didn't work. So obviously the fixed mindset is correct. Not true. The reason you tried learning and it didn't work was because you were doing all of the wrong things. And that's what I'm going to explain now. So nobody, I think, is completely wasting their time. I don't think anyone who tries to learn a language makes zero progress. It'd be very difficult to make zero progress. Like, there aren't many people who can't learn how to say hello in a language, but a lot of learners could be learning way more efficiently than they are now. And part of the reason for that is because a lot of the language learning advice on the internet is just complete trash. So yeah, you're just going to have to trust me on that one, but I am going to help you. So the 2 best tips that you can implement that are easy as a beginner language learner are the 80-20 rule and consistency. So the 80-20 rule as the first tip is basically the idea that it exists outside of language learning. It's just like a productivity rule, but it's the idea that 80% of results come from 20% of tasks. So there are like a few things that you can do that will give you the most progress possible. So for example, if you're trying to become really good at running, the 80-20 rule would be that the best progress you can make from running is literally just from running more, like doing more running practice. And then of course there's a few other small things you can do, like getting the right vitamins, getting the right nutrition, stretching. Stretching would probably be a big one as well. You know what I mean, maybe getting the right shoes. But of course the biggest thing is just running more and building up that leg strength. And it's the same in language learning. So the high ROI means return on investment tasks in language learning are input, repetition, and studying. So rather than focusing on a gazillion different language learning tasks, the three things that will give you the most progress in whatever language you're learning are input, repetition, and studying. I've already made a video on the high ROI language learning task, which I definitely recommend you check out. But input is basically consuming content. So you can, as a beginner, you'd probably just want to watch it like vlogs on YouTube from native speakers with subtitles. You can also read practice paragraphs, but it can be anything. So reading books, watching movies, TV, podcasts, listening to podcasts, etc. That is really good for becoming better at a language. Repetition is literally just re-watching and re-looking at things to become better at it. So for example, flashcards. And studying is like watching videos by like a native speaker explaining how to say all the different ways of saying the. For example, like in Italian, there's 7 ways of saying the. Il, la, le, I, li, lo, and le are all the different ways of saying da. So yeah, that could be useful as well. Those 3 things are the most important things. So try and find some kind of content, do flashcards, and study. I've already made a video on it, and this is a big video, so you should definitely go and check out that actual video. But yeah, the second thing is consistency. So a lot of learners are really, really inconsistent, and I think that is a huge problem with language learning, because of course if you're not staying repetitive and frequent with your learning, you're not actually going to make progress. So definitely try and be organized and say when you're going to study, build a habit tracker as well. I've already made a video on that too. And yeah, try and get some kind of input every single day, even if it's watching one vlog by a YouTuber who speaks Italian, or any language you're learning. And then yeah, maybe try and do one stack of like 20 flashcards a day. That would be your daily repetition. Literally those 2 things every single day would make you such a good learner, way more than most people. And yeah, trying to learn more is of course a good thing, but not everyone can do that. So yeah, focus on the most important tasks and stay consistent with your language learning. Have a habit tracker or a routine, something like that. But yeah, those 2 tips alone will give you a massive boost in results fairly quickly. And yeah, I think overall, don't be a Grinch with language learning and fret that you're wasting your time. I think a lot of people do worry that they're just putting in time and they're not actually going to get anywhere. And yeah, if you've learned anything from this video, it's to use the growth mindset. Make sure you understand that you can make progress by putting in effort, and then make sure you are actually putting in effort to make progress in a language. But yeah, I'd highly recommend you start using the advice as soon as possible, and you will see the results roll in. Bit of a complex video, so if you do have any questions, comment down below. Happy to help anyone. Do have a link to my Discord in the description if you want to jump in. It's completely free, and I can help you one-on-one in there if you'd like. Guys, it's been a video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I've got links to my website in the description as well. And definitely check out the other videos as well that I kind of mentioned, especially the language learning ROI one. That will help you understand. It's like a proper full-length video explaining the language learning tasks that are most useful. So if you don't really know what to do to actually learn a language, that video is your one-stop shop basically. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a good one.